In Star Wars Episode 3, Obi-Wan says that only a Sith deals in absolutes. And if that's the case, then call me Darth Ginger, because I absolutely hate this film. What? I put more effort into that joke than Disney put into this movie. I fucking went there. Oh, it's gonna be a long one. Now, the fanboys already calling up a bounty hunter to put a bullet in my head just for even suggesting I don't like the movie. I just want to clarify that honestly, hand on heart, no one is more disappointed to hear me say that than I am. I'm gutted about my thoughts on this film, probably more than you are, and I'm coping, so don't be afraid that I maybe have a different opinion to yours. After all, fear only leads to anger, anger leads to hate, and hate leads to saltiness, you whiny little twat bags. Get over it. I'm not going to complain about anyone enjoying the film. I'm one of you guys, really. I love Star Wars. It's literally one of my favourite subjects to talk about. Hell, I have a straight 40-minute pitch about how I think the prequel trilogy should have went. That you should totally watch, by the way. Shameless plug. And I don't even know where to begin with how much this movie disappointed me. The entire time I watched it, I couldn't help but agonize over the wasted potential. Rogue One, a cash-in story, tells the tale of the group of rebels who got the Death Star plans that eventually led to the events of A New Hope. And fuck, do they love to hammer that one home. Did you know this is important because it made A New Hope happen, guys? Rebellions are founded on hope. Hope, guys. Hope. What did these people manage to find in the Death Star plans? They found hope. Are we saying hope enough yet? Sure hope we are. Hope, 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 hope.
Rebellions are built on hope.
For Christ's sake, I get it. But the thing is, as important as you tell me this tale is to the bigger universe as a whole, there is absolutely nothing in this entire movie that tells me this story needed to be told. The idea of exploring the presumed suicide mission of the people who sought out the Death Star plans should be a fantastic tale that paints the grim reality of war amongst the backdrop of the wonderful Star Wars iconography. There was an opportunity here to meaningfully expand the universe and show a side to it we don't always see represented on the silver screen, a chance to make it feel even more like a universe, one that can be filled with not just tales of high adventure but also bleak stories of bitter conflict, but they just refused to commit. This is the safest, blandest product they could possibly have made. It can't decide whether it wants to be a grim portrayal of the misery of war or another fun action movie, so it does the absolute worst and decides to be neither, leading to a film that goes in and out of tone so much you'd think it was shagging them. Hey guys, look, here's some gloomy Hiroshima iconography symbolism. Oh, so very sad. But also here is a funny robot to lighten up the mood. Eat shit. Trademark 1, a trademark story, is a mess. Not too dark, not too light, just blandly in the middle. It just doesn't get the universe it's in. There's nothing about it that's special. Sure, it's technically a Star Wars movie because the guns go pew pew and they have giant dogs for tanks, but it feels like someone just reskinned a generic military sci-fi flick. At worst, it's a terrible Star Wars movie. At best, it's an okay war movie. Functional but forgettable. Say what you like about the prequels, but I'd rather watch a car crash than a minor bump. At least you'd remember the car crash. It's so frustrating as well because there's sprinkles of greatness dotted around here and there and they just never do anything with any of them. The entire film sort of dances around this idea of the moral ambiguity of yore and it feels like it's going to do something smart with it. In the opening 5 minutes we see one of our heroes, the rebel Cassian, shoot an ally in the back and kill him because it's better to have him dead than captured. I remember sitting there going, oh shit! And that dude's the hero. Nicely done, movie. That's really interesting. Are you gonna go anywhere with that? And then the movie replied, ha! No. I'm all for setting up the rebels as kind of grey. I like this idea that there are no innocent parties in a war, just less guilty ones. But come on. That's all you're giving me? Later on, Cassian has this big speech about how all the rebels have done all these awful things for their cause, and he literally just starts listing off shit. He's all geeked. Stevie over there was a spy. Barry over there was a hitman. Davey shagged his mate's mom. We've done some terrible stuff. And I'm like, really? Have you? Sure then, don't tell, for Christ's sake. Like, I know you killed your mate at the start, but why is there no instance of anything really unethical after that? Don't give me some token atrocity with seemingly no consequence just so you can tick a box that says, sure, rebels can be bad, and then nothing ever again. And also, while you're trying to paint this morally grey idea, where's the bit where I get to see the Empire being good, or did you just forget you had to tick that box also? No stormtroopers playing with the kids, no villain kissing his wife, no balance. You were the chosen one, Rogue One. You were supposed to bring balance to this conflict, not whatever it is you did. I think it was nothing. Look, if you want to say something about serious conflict, then let's see some real grim war shit if you want to tell that story. Where was the scene where Cassian tortured someone? Where was the scene where he shot an ally who became a burden again after this? Sure, he talks about how he's done all these terrible things, but I reckon the lad's chatting shit. The closest after that point he gets to moral ambiguity is he thinks about maybe shooting someone he said he wouldn't, but then decides not to anyway. Whoa, step the fuck back, Charles Manson. This guy's the real edgelord. So edgy, in fact, his one crime in the whole movie that's there to tell you how gritty and grounded this film is occurs in just subtle enough a way to keep it from going past its super high age rating. Oh shit. Yeah, that's right, boys and girls. This movie's so fucking hardcore, you need a parent to accompany you now if you're 11 and under, biatch. Star Wars is gritty now! To the movie's credit, it does try and add a little complexity to this notion by having an early plot point revolve around the character Saul Guerrero, portrayed by Forrest Whitaker, being a more militant, terrorist kind of rebel dude, but they actively remove him as a party within the Rebel Alliance, the main rebel good guy stressing, oh, he's an extremist, oh, he's too harsh, we don't associate with that guy, taking away any real responsibility from them. I mean, you could argue they then attempt to make an alliance with him because they need information from him, which is kinda bad, but not really. And that's a shame because that could have been interesting too. They even kind of have this really cool setup where Guerrero has prosthetic limbs and has to use a breathing apparatus, and I was like, ooh, that's cool movie. You're sort of drawing parallels with Vader there, but for a guy who's on the rebel side. That's really interesting. Are you going to do anything with that? And then the movie replied, ha! No. Speaking of Vader, holy shit is he badly mishandled in Disney War's A Revenue Stream story. For one, you can remove him from the film entirely and have the exact same movie, basically confirming that he's only present so that they can get some fan-servicey money shots in the trailer, but for the brief time he is on screen, he is just crap. We're introduced to his fierce and intimidating presence through a goddamn quip, after he strangles the main villain of the piece and says, "Don't choke on your aspirations." Fuck's sake, man. I'm gonna choke on my own vomit after hear you crack a pun as shite as that again. People will say this is a cool line and it's inoffensive, but can you imagine if this was something he did in the other films?
Looks like Han's getting stoned. You've really pushed me over the edge. Look at me when I'm talking to you. I'm not gonna force you to do this. Shocking, isn't it? The red light means stop.
Then we'll get a moment where he slaughters a bunch of dudes, and that paired with the quip makes me worry because you know what they're doing, right? They're doing the fan pandering thing. They're making Vader badass. Ugh. Okay, look, I get it. Vader's meant to be ruthless, and it's kinda cool to see him go ham on some guys, but it's just substanceless. I don't ever want to see Vader on that personally intimidating level in this film. In the original trilogy, it made sense to see him in like close quarters because of his relationship to Luke and Leia. Within that story, I don't mind getting to know Vader, but this is a film through the rebels' perspective. From their eyes, Vader's a dictator, a fascist. You don't see Kim Jong-un going and personally bitch-slapping every Korean he takes a dislike to. He just gets his men to do it. And you know what? Vader did too. A New Hope literally opens with him doing just that. It's only when the narrative explores a close relationship to him that we see more of the scary human presence as opposed to the scary ideological one. Vader in this movie, though, should have been in it without being in it. Like, you needed Vader's presence to always be felt. He'd be on posters, stormtroopers would talk about being loyal to him, propaganda would be everywhere. Hell, have fucking statues of the dude standing in the military-occupied cities and planets. To the rebels, Vader is the face of an ideology. In World War II, troops on the ground would never meet Hitler, but they knew his face. They were told to see it in the face of every enemy. Imagine a Rogue One film where we don't see Vader the whole runtime, but he manages to feel there in almost every shot. A constant visage of his in some way staring down on a small, inept, ragtag crew. Imagine when you finally do see Vader in person, it's from the perspective of a couple of rebels standing disguised in a crowd of hundreds of thousands of loyal stormtroopers, staring up at this seemingly immortal, unconquerable, untarnishable face of a poisonous movement that sweeps like a plague over their galaxy. Imagine these couple rebels being presented with this image and the heartbroken, resigned look on their faces as they see this powerful man and his vast army put into perspective before them and think, that's who we're up against. Man, if they could have pulled that off, I'd have gotten goosebumps. But instead we're presented with Quippy McGee and his lightsaber flourish. Sure, it's a little scary when he starts slaughtering, but it'd be more terrifying if he didn't even have to. He doesn't have to lift a finger to make people dead. He's just the man who walks among the corpses. I was talking to my buddy Film Rant about this actually, check out his channel, it's pretty good, and we were saying that if you absolutely must have Vader personally attack the rebels, then there are ways to make it way more scary. For a start, why has he got to kill a bunch of random unnamed grunts? Imagine you've got a scene where the Rogue One crew are all still alive and they snuck in and got the Death Star plans and it's all high spirits, and then Vader walks through the doors and the tone just changes in an instant. How cool would it have been if they treated Vader with all the fear and terror of the Xenomorph in the original Alien films? They're all hiding, praying Vader doesn't find them, hoping the rumors aren't true about how he can sense people with the Force, and Vader just slowly walks close by one of their hiding spots, tension building and building and building before BOOM! A sudden moment of violence as Vader rips one of the characters out from their safety with a devastating force choke, slamming their head against the steely wall with repeated thuds and murdering them in cold blood as the others panickingly run like hell, only for Vader to immediately catch and kill all but maybe two of them. His introduction becoming instantly responsible for the violent ends of over half the major characters, rather than the flashy coolness of him slicing through unimportant paper people. And this isn't just a problem with Vader. Almost none of the characters work. I haven't even mentioned most of them thus far because there's nothing much to say. Donnie Yen's character is actually really cool, I'll give them, because he feels like a Star Wars creation. He's not a Jedi, but he's as skilled as one, just because he's chill with the Force. That's cool, I like that. He's a fun time and fits in nicely with the spirit and spirituality of the Star Wars universe. Similarly, Riz Ahmed's portrayal of Bodhi Rook, an Imperial pilot who defects to the Rebels, marks a nice high point. He's well acted and he's the only one amongst them who feels like a real person and not some multi-talented superhuman. He kinda bumbles through big moments, things like getting wire caught on objects in the heat of battle does a lot to humanize him, and I enjoy his story as a defector. I just wish there was more of it. Honestly, I think there's maybe a better film in here somewhere if you make him the main character even. As for the others, it's mostly shite. The villain is boring, Baze Malbus barely had a line, so boring. Cassian is somewhat interesting in his initial moral ambiguity, then immediately boring. Mads Mikkelsen plays Jyn Erso's dad, and he is boring. K2SO, the comic relief robot, is unfunny, and when he's not cracking jokes, he's kinda boring. And Jyn Erso, the lead, is so boring. There's nothing about these characters to cling on to. No intrigue, no expressiveness, no joy. The argument is this is supposed to be a movie about normal people, but they aren't. They're far too competent to be normal people. I mean, Jyn, after getting broken out of prison, immediately beats the shit out of like 3 guys the second the handcuffs are removed. Baze is a master with his gun and regularly takes on like 20 troopers at once. Cassian is an adept strategist. Jin's dad's a super genius. I mean, these people are practically Jedi without being Jedi. They're basically space wizards all the same, just only in whatever area the film needs them to be. Competency from the Rebels side in general is actually a crippling problem in Rogue One, a Lego set advert. The whole point of Rogue One is supposed to be about this tiny weeny little band of rebels standing up to this massive evil dictatorship of a fascist empire. If that's the case, why does it always feel like the rebels are winning the whole movie? Apart from the moments when the Empire go, oh yeah, we'll have the massive genocide ray, let's crack that on, they always seem on equal or worse footing to the heroes. Why is it that a small rebel fleet can fly to a major Empire engineering base and bomb the ever-living shite out of it with little to no resistance? How come when a stormtrooper militia wanders through the city with a tank, it only takes one resistance grenade to get the upper hand and cause a fairly even civil skirmish? How come a fucking blind dude can beat the shit out of a small army of troopers when you have guns, guys? Stop approaching him and just shoot him, for crying out loud. Just because the first bullet doesn't hit doesn't mean that hand-to-hand combat with fucking Ip Man is a better strategy. Sort your shit out, boys. It's like they understand they want the Empire to be a threatening force because they keep teasing it but don't ever know how to actually do it. There's a great moment where AT-ATs join a battle and Baze blasts one in the face with a rocket only for it to kind of shrug the explosion off with a "Pfft, I'm proper hard me, mate, that didn't even hurt." When this happened, I wanted to jump in my seat. Yes! Finally! The Empire are scary and overpowering and... Oh, look at that. They blew its legs off before it even made any difference, having only killed about 7 grunts. Belter. And this isn't even to mention its biggest crime. It's really dull. The first hour and a half is such a pointless, emotionless fetch quest of a plot that it made me not care about Star Wars. How do you do that? My default setting is caring about Star Wars. Like before Pandering 101, a Star Wars story, you could have said to me on any given day, "Hey, GGTV, what you doing today?" And I'd have replied with, "Oh, I don't know, probably just gonna care about some Star Wars, you know, the usual." But for the first 3/4 of this film, I just did not give a shit. Like, the characters for the most part are so distinctly average, I can't become attached to their stories. There's an early incident where a supposedly sad thing happens and there's all this dramatic piano music and the film makes Jin cry but gives the audience no reason to cry with her. Call me cynical, but I just often found myself shrugging at events that should have been world-shattering and thinking, so? And God, maybe I could have cared about the plot, but the only bit that does matter we already know the outcome to, and the bits before that is just one long trek for info like a game of intergalactic Chinese whispers. Seriously, the catalyst for Wacky Robot Adventures merchandise available in all Disney stores story is that Cassian goes and sees an informant, who gives him the information that there is a pilot who has defected, who has some more information. This leads to the characters all going to find the pilot, who tells them he gave this information to the terrorist guy. They find the terrorist guy, who gives Jin the information. Jin then goes to her dad for more proof of the info on that info before taking that info to the rebels who go, "Nah, we don't like this info, get some more info for proof of this info." Ugh. It's as boring and tedious to see as it is to watch. I remember when they were chasing this idea around thinking, I sort of like this notion that the war's so dangerous they can't be sure of the credibility of any source of information, but you are going to wrap this up soon so we can get on with it, aren't you, on your movie? And then the movie replied, "Ha! Ha 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 ha. You aren't fucking getting this, are you, sweetheart?" There is one thing I liked about this film though, and that's the ending. That said, I can't talk about that without going into major spoiler territory. So if you don't want to know my thoughts on it, then close the video before the countdown in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so the best part of the whole film is when everybody dies. Partly because while it could have been handled way better by not giving them all glorious hero deaths that directly contradict the bleak tone they seem to be aiming towards with this ending, it still is the closest it manages to come to selling some of the ideas it tries to convey, such as this is a war and war is hell. Also, partly because, to be fair to the film, the action scenes can be pretty spectacular, and this all goes out with a nice, massive battle. But mostly it's my favourite part just because it meant that the credits rolled and I got to go home and cry wank the sadness away over a viewing of Empire Strikes Back while sat in my Chewbacca onesie. Oh, also YouTube is broken now and only pushes content that gets liked and stuff, so while I don't normally do this, please give me a hand with a like, subscribe, a comment or whatever if you enjoyed the video. Cheers guys, I hate having to do this because it just totally killed the cutaway momentum of that last line and now I got nothing to do. Class.